Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order. Roll call, you want to do that, Angie, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that tonight. Chair Dorsey is here. Vice Chair Thornton.
Here.
Diane Foster. Here. Mike Meyer.
Here.
And Marie Shop is not here this evening. Mike Schultz.
Here.
Mike Smith.
Here.
Chris West.
Here.
And Lori Zwingli.
Here.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, approval of minutes. Do we have any discussion on them? Any changes we need to make? Brian and I thought they were fine. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Thanks, Lori. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Angie, the meeting minutes are approved for the September meeting. Board member announcements. I'm going to call you in the order I see you on my screen. If I forget someone or somehow screw up a name because you're down below with your screen off, let me know. Lori.
Well, I wasn't expecting to be first. So I have had the pleasure of meeting our new city manager, and I see that at least I see his name on here, so I'm thinking he's here somewhere, and initials. So I'm hoping that he will introduce himself to us tonight and have an assignment for us. And other than that, we are starting to talk about getting ready for the Police Foundation Gala, which should be taking place, I believe, May 14 this year. And always looking for bodies to help, always looking for new members. So if you know of anyone or have ideas, please feel free to share them with us. That's it.
Thanks. Mike Smith.
Whoa. Yeah, I was just noticing, in case you guys have not looked at the attendance list here, that the mics of the world are taking over.
Yes,
So,
I noticed that.
Hundreds of mics. I'm glad to see that. I think, last time we talked, I mentioned that I went through the FBI Citizens Academy, which was 6 weeks of just intensely interesting stuff. And if anybody is interested in that, let me know and I'll hook you up. But as part of that, I've been volunteering out at PDX to help train TSA agents. I'm the guy that tries to get through the screening process with stuff in my suitcase, or I'm wearing some smelly stuff that the dogs point to. And it's absolutely fascinating. Although I will tell you that the first time I get tased or bitten, I'm out. So that's my excitement for the moment.
Okay, Mr. Mike Meyer.
I had one small thing that, so I own a business in town, and the other night we were given a Night Eyes certificate from the police department. I wasn't aware of this program until we saw it, and it's, police officers when they're out on patrol saying that they looked into your door and checked your business, and it was a nice thing. I was not aware of that program, but it was nice to know that someone was going through the parking lot at 5:43 a.m. and checking how we were doing. So that's all for me.
So wait, so maybe Ty or Chief Growth can chime in. I haven't heard of this either. Is this really like, hey, we're just checking in on you to make sure everything's good to go at your business?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a crime prevention program that we've had around for probably decades, at least one decade, but a long time. So
That's awesome.
We encourage our officers to get out of their car and check doors and businesses, and then after they find that it's secure, they put one of those flyers up there just to let the folks know that we were out and about. And if they happen to find something that isn't secure, then we'll try to get a phone number and call the emergency contact so they can come out and take care of it.
Great.
That
Yeah,
is super
nice to get
cool.
that.
And Mike, on a personal note, it's nice to have a face and a name since we've talked health insurance together. It's nice
Yes.
to put this together. Thank you. Chris.
Well, I was thinking I wasn't going to have anything to share, which I know Mike Smith would not believe. So I did come up with something. Well, and the first thing is Maria's absent because she's at Disneyland, just so everybody knows. According to Facebook, that's where she is. But, for several of my clients over the years, we always start a meeting with a safety share, which I think is pretty cool. And I shared today on the meeting, and it was all about the change in the weather, making sure that you had new windshield wipers on, your tires were in good shape, and stuff like that. So I just share that to everybody. Since we got slick roads again, check your vehicles. Make sure you're ready for the winter or the rain at least. So that's all I have, Megan.
Good points. I agree that Rain-X on the window and making sure your tires are set with the right grip. It's important this time of year. Counselor Young.
Oh, I don't usually give during board comments.
Well, fine, but I saw you, so I thought I'd invite you to.
I'm on the agenda later. I get my time to talk.
Okay. Mr. Mike Schultz.
I don't have anything for tonight. So thanks for asking, though.
Brian, you're welcome to share, but since I know you're sick, if you don't want to, just give me a thumbs up and I'll go move on.
I'll share briefly. Had a police ride along with Dean Borges. This was last week, and it was phenomenal again to see Sherwood's finest in action. Had a few incidents where we were able to locate some lost children, which is strange in the middle of the night to see kids that are getting out of the house and going to the park and hanging out by themselves or what have you. But it was great to see we were able to locate them and return them back to their parents, and got to do some traffic stops. And all I can say is before you leave your house at night, make sure all your lights are working. But it was a great experience. And thank you, Megan, for sharing tonight.
Sure.
Megan,
Diane? Yeah, Mike?
can I just tell Brian to please just get off this thing and go take care of yourself, because you look like hell and you're making me feel bad.
I've been telling him that since 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
You're
thought I
not
was
going to
being
listen
a
to me,
team
dude.
player.
Listen to Mike.
All
Yeah,
right,
yeah. Good
well,
night.
Thank you all. I'll watch the meeting on YouTube. Thank you again.
Feel better, Brian.
Some rest, Brian.
Okay, Brian, Megan, I don't believe I've. Sorry, my family's asking me to leave. I don't believe I have forgotten anyone, did I? Because Captain Hanlon, Chief Growth, no, Angie, you guys don't give any updates. I don't have any updates. Oh, I have an update. I did the Women's March a couple weeks ago, and it was entirely peaceful and wonderful to see, hundreds of people out and not have one incident. That was really cool to see. Hold on one sec. I got to turn the lights on before I can do this. I didn't think you'd want to hear me talking to Alexa. Okay, so city manager. Did we lose it?
I think I'm on. My connection kind of went away there. I thought I heard city manager. Is that right? Am I good?
I said on to business. We have a new city manager. Welcome, Mr. Campbell. Would you like to talk?
Yeah, I'll take a moment. Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate Chief Groth reaching out to me to invite me to the board, allow me part of the agenda. Excited. I think this is my second full week with the city, so happy to be here and be part of the board. There was some foreshadowing earlier. I've had a chance to meet with a couple of you as I just reached out to community members and stakeholders. And, we have a police chief search coming up. So I just wanted to give an opportunity to allow the board. Here's my homework. I hate to be someone coming to do an introduction and saying, and here's my homework I'm giving you. But the homework is to help me come up with characteristics and attributes that you would like to see in the new police chief. What is it that I need to know coming into the community? What is it the community is looking for? Help me make good decisions as we go forward. So that's my homework that I have for all of you. Happy to answer any questions, happy to meet with anyone. Truly have an open door policy and looking forward to getting engaged and involved in the community and getting to know all of you as we go forward. So with that, I will open up to questions.
I don't have any questions, but just welcome. Delighted to have you on board.
What attracted you to this position in Sherwood?
I'll be honest. The police chief was a big factor, and the captain were a big factor. When the position came open, they reached out to me. I had a relationship with them, and encouraged me to apply. And so I talked to my wife and my family. I have a stepdaughter who's 24. She's off on her own doing great. I don't want to acknowledge her, but I have an 11-year-old daughter and a wife, and we talked about it. And personally, professionally, it just felt like a really great fit. So. I was really happy with where I was at. I was in a great community with a great leadership team and a great council, but sometimes opportunities come up where you just say, I have to put my name in the hat and see what happens. And so I did that and was lucky to emerge as an opportunity to come forward and be the next city manager.
That's cool. Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, some of you may remember when Captain Hanlon left us for a little while to go fill in somewhere. It was at City of Staten. So he was filling in as, I guess, police chief. Is that what he was filling in as there?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that was.
So
Yeah,
I'm sorry, if I may just expound. So in my work with the Oregon Association Chiefs of Police, I co-chair one of their committees, the Executive Resources Committee, and one of the key programs we provide is assistance to cities when they need an interim chief or an agency review. And so the city of Staten, Mr. Campbell reached out to OACP because they were in need of an interim chief and assistance in putting together recruitment for their next full-time chief. Or permanent chief, I should say. So I was fortunate enough to reach out and connect with the city of Staten. And given its proximity, given my knowledge that Captain Hanlon was interested in being a chief, and we just thought this would be a great opportunity for him to gain some actual experience in the big chair, as they say. So talked with City Manager Joe Gall, and we worked out an arrangement with the city of Staten. And so Ty went off and assisted them. And then I worked with Mr. Campbell and his staff in getting the recruitment up for their next permanent chief. So that's how our paths crossed. That's how we got to know each other. And I can just say that I was very impressed with his professionalism, his mannerism, just how smart he was and how dialed in with what needed to happen. So they, just to kind of fill in some of those pieces, they had a previous chief that had, just to put it nicely, not really done them any favors. And Mr. Campbell was looking to make the police department the very best it could be in a professional organization. They didn't have any internal candidates. And so they needed an interim and they needed to do some recruiting. And so we helped them get to that point. And I was just impressed with his ability to tackle the challenge and to understand that there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things. And so that's how we came to know each other. So when this position came open, it was kind of a no-brainer to me that I refer him to, or give his name to our recruiter as somebody that they should reach out to. So that'll just kind of fill in some of the blanks there for everybody. So you understand, how do they know? So on and so forth.
That helps a lot. I always wonder, is it like in the private sector where it's like, oh, I know someone and they'd be great for the job, or if it's this big blanket national RFP process that you don't know anyone coming in?
Well, it was a little of both. We had 34 applicants, and I think 17 states. I don't know, a lot of out of states. I mean, of the 34. So
Wow.
It was sort of both word of mouth around locally and national search.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think it's great. I'm excited you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
From my personal contacts, I've heard a lot of good things about you.
Thank you.
That's always exciting. Okay, police policy updates. Chief, do you want to lead that?
Chris has his hand up.
Oh, Chris, I'm sorry. I missed that.
Thank you, Megan. So, Keith, is it a national search, or do you do it through the OCP, or how are you going to go about recruiting?
Yeah, we're looking at trying to bring forward a national recruiter to do a national search. Kristen has been remaining engaged in that and is trying to finish that process. That kind of started before I got here, but I was engaged in support of that decision. So hopefully we'll have something really soon that we can finalize and then come forward with more information as we kind of get those dates and that information laid out. But I definitely want this group to be a part of it. I've been reaching out to stakeholders and would want them to be part of this process. It's important that we get stakeholders engaged and involved as we move forward.
Chief, I've heard several rumors on the actual dates of your departure and consulting. Can you please confirm what exactly you're doing as of the dates you're doing them?
Sure, I was going to cover that in my staff report, but now's as good a time as any. Since we're talking about, there's a reason we're doing a search, right? So I'm just going to make the safe assumption that everybody is aware, but I have, if you've read the articles, and if for some chance you haven't seen the articles, I have announced my retirement. I've been in law enforcement for this fall, will be in about a month, a little less than a month, will be 32 years. And a couple more months after that would be my 14th year as your chief. I will not see that anniversary in February, however, because my last day will be the end of December. So, yeah, so that's where we're at. It's time. If you've read the article, then you know that it's partly time because I think 32 years is enough, and it's partly time because it's just every good leader, I believe, should go out at the right time and not too late. And I think the department's in a great position right now. I know the department's in a great position right now to move forward. And so anyway, so yeah, that's the timeline. Is I will be here through some point in December, obviously with the holidays and everything, but through the 31st, and then I'll be done.
You're not consulting? I had heard a 6-month consulting rumor.
That's what he's doing right now.
Oh, well, yeah, it's not consulting. So technically I retired at the end of June, and then the city and I agreed to 6-month continuation. And so that's what's going on, but it's not really consulting.
Yeah.
It's just 6 more months as the chief, and to help with the transition. Obviously, at that time we were getting ready to hire a new city manager, and it was just I recognize, and I think the city recognized that it would not be the time for another key leadership position to just pick up and walk out. So it worked for both of us, and so that's what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies the rumors, but also the terminology used. I appreciate that.
I have a quick question for Keith.
Yeah.
Keith 2. So in city council circles, he's Keith 2 because we have Keith 1 is the mayor. So it gets confusing when we're saying Keith. So you've given this board some homework. How would you like them to get that back? Do you want them to email you their thoughts, or?
Yeah, they can email their thoughts. They can come together and come to consensus, or just individually email me. Happy to do meetings like we've done already, just to get feedback. But just want the people who are engaged and involved in the community in this way, and engaged and involved with the police department, to help me understand what I need to know coming in from the outside. And I do agree that the Sherwood Police Department has an outstanding reputation, and the people that are in the know, the people who live and breathe this on the day to day. Even before I came here, even before I applied, Sherwood was one of those organizations, and so Chief Growth and Ty and the whole leadership team really deserve credit for that. So, but knowing all that, it's still having humility to understand that as I'm coming in, I need to know what the community would like to see and what I need to know, so we can make the best decision for our community going forward, and we can continue to do and to keep Sherwood as one of the safest places in Oregon.
Angie, can you send out his email to all of us this week, please?
Yes, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Just makes communicating that much easier. Anything else before we move on to updates?
Thank you, everyone, for having me.
Thank you. Welcome. Chief, is it you or Captain Hanlon doing the policy updates? I don't know.
Captain Hanlon's going to do them this time around.
You're up.
Yeah, he left me with the book of updates to go through.
Oh, you get an online copy. There are no books. It's updated too frequently.
I got a whole book here to go through. Hey, before I get started, just so I don't forget, because Angie would be mad at me if I don't remind everybody that on the 23rd is the drug take back. So that's this Saturday at the PD from 10 to 2. And then on the 30th is our shred event, which will be 9 to noon at the PD as well. So both those events back-to-back weekends. So if you got any pharmacy stuff you need to drop off or documents you need to shred, we're going to be open for business. Since I have not done one of these things before, I have been advised that I just need to just briefly go through the formats. It sounds like you guys have all been given the updates, and hopefully you've read them word for word. Full disclosure here, I did not see the prior language with the new language, so there may be some things in here that I don't know if it was a word change or a comma that was added. I won't be able to necessarily tell you because I didn't see what was there before. I only have the after part of it. But most of these, or I should say a lot of these, are House bill and Senate bill and legislative updates that are pretty straightforward. So unless there's any questions, we'll just kind of rip through them so we can make this as painless as possible on that extent. So 303 is the control devices and techniques. This was updated by Lexipol, which everybody knows that we use, and this was a legislative House Bill 2928 that was created new regulations around crowd control device usage and law enforcement actions following usage. What I'll do is where'd you go, Megan? Do you want me to just go through all these and then we come back around for questions, or do you guys want me to pause and go through them one at a time if you have questions?
Let's first just ask this. In looking through the packet that Angie put out, does anyone have any questions about any of them specifically we could just jump to? Chris.
Yeah. Captain Hanlon, one of the key things is if the chief or you tweak something beyond what Lexus drafted given the new legislation, if there was any nuances that are Sherwood specific. I think that's the one thing that I'm interested in. I know in the past there's been some little nuances that because of Sherwood policy were tweaks that he did in updating, but if this is all straight from the legislation, then that's a different issue, at least to me. So
Good point, Chris. So to follow up on that, Captain Hanlon, a lot of times the chief would say things like 303, nothing big, we're fine with it. It's the way it's always been, but we need to skip down to 313 and really dig into this. This is how it's historically been. This is what I changed it to. This is why, etc.
And that's good feedback. So all the House bill and legislative language wasn't changed at all. I mean, we're directed and that's what we need to follow, especially, well, with all of it. So to answer your point, Chris, no, we haven't gone through and changed anything that we have been directed to do. Now, in most of these, and you can see that they were a lot of either grammatical or language cleanups that needed to take place. There is nothing in here that was out of the ordinary or that was drastically changed. As a matter of fact, nothing on our part specifically that we as Sherwood PD thought that we needed to change the language on that. And the chief can confirm that, but it just when we had gone through these, that's where we were at. And obviously, as you know, we're an accredited agency. We're just finalizing that again. So it's always a good time to be going through this and cleaning it up. And so you're going to see in some of those things that there was recommendations and language cleanup regarding that accreditation. So we made sure that we're up to speed and we're in line with what is expected with that. And on that, we have our final inspection on Tuesday, Tuesday. I don't remember what the date is. It's coming up. And they'll be on site to go through there. And at this point, we are good to go. I think as of today, we've given them everything they need. And the last step of that is going to be the on-site inspection. Not to get derailed, but I saw that some of that language in there was a result of the accreditation process. So I guess
nothing alarming that you think we need to dig into.
No, I mean, a lot of it's just straightforward cleanup language or anything that is coming down the pipe legislatively that we are having to bring in and come into compliance with. As you know, sometimes these things from legislation come down and they get vetted as they are implemented, and they can and sometimes do change down the road when we run into issues with them. And I see Kim has her hand up. Oh, you're on mute.
World of Zoom. I was just curious. Some of them say this policy was updated by Lexipol, which usually due to the House bill, Senate bills, or whatever. And then some of them, for instance, like 306, it says this policy was updated by police department staff. So I assume that's Sherwood directly.
Yeah. So let me jump in here and add some clarification. So updates occur for one of two reasons. Either Lexipol issues an update, or we go in and we change something, which kind of goes back to Chris's point. Mm-hmm. And that may not be triggered by Lexipol. That could be triggered because we don't like the language the way it is. So some months ago, I don't remember when it was, but if you recall, we updated our pursuit policy, and that was purely based on our preference to change some of the language to clarify some things and so on and so forth. So there may be a couple different reasons why we would trigger an update ourselves. And one of which, as Ty said, is because of accreditation. So for any accreditation program to be worth its weight, it's based on best standards, and it has to change and be progressive. And so as the Oregon Accreditation Alliance, as they update and change some of their standards, that requires oftentimes some changes in policy language, because our policy is what guides us into best practice and helps meet our accreditation standards. So as you go through here, you'll see either one of those two options. Either this policy was updated by Lexipol or it was updated by police department staff. Lexipol generally will update for one of two key reasons: legislative changes, changes in case law, new laws, whatever, or they identify grammatical errors, which, as Lori Zwingli can attest to, there's no shortage of in that policy manual, unfortunately. And it's hard to find all of them at once. And so Lexipol will, over time, will find something that they think needs to be stated clearer for grammatical reasons or whatever. So that's really the two reasons why Lexipol will update it. And then there are several in here that were updated by the staff, the police department staff, for a couple different, depending on which chapter it is. So for example, 306 firearms, we wanted to strengthen the language regarding training and storage. And so we updated the language. So basically it puts an onus on the police officer to make sure that any department issued firearms that they have control over are properly stored in the department and outside of the department. So if you take your department issued handgun home with you, it's your responsibility by policy to make sure that it's properly stored and secured to prevent any kind of tragedy. And then, language about training and, different things like that. So that's just an example. There's a couple of them. And what I would ask, Ty, is that you go ahead and go through each one of those. So what's really important for the board to remember, and so I'm reminding you, is that you're kind of the first step in vetting these policies, right? And so you're ultimately going to make a recommendation to City Council. City Council then needs to know that you all vetted these, you're comfortable with them, they line up with what you hear from community members, your own expectations, what you think is right and appropriate, because then we go to City Council, we do the same thing. City Council considers our recommendation as staff, and they consider your recommendation as a police advisory board when they issue the final approval. So while in some cases it may be nice and appreciated, the trust and the confidence that you guys may have in us, this is one of those situations where I think it's really important that we go through each one of these so that you understand which policies were updated and why they were updated. And to Ty's point, there's just too much. Updates come too frequently, especially now with all the legislative changes, for us to know this stuff verbatim and say, okay, this is what happened, this is what happened. So that's why when we prepare this police policy update report, we're capturing the highlights for you. This is where we made the changes and this is what we changed. And so it kind of gives you that summary without going through pages and pages of policy documents to catch every comma that was adjusted, every this that was replaced with that, or whatever the case may be. So hopefully that clarifies it.
You ready for me?
Chief? Yeah, but now I have a question on one specific because he brought it up. The 306 firearms, Ty?
Yes.
Okay, so let's just pick on the chief. If you find that he is not storing his weapons properly at home, is there any recourse as his quote boss? Does that make sense? I'm reversing it.
You asking me or the chief?
I'm asking you. So like if the chief is, a 5-year police veteran, so he's been with you 5 years, and you realize that he goes home at night and he tosses his gun and whatever else that he brings to work that's considered a weapon on the coffee table and just leaves it there. He has a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 9-year-old. Is there any recourse you have to amend that behavior? Or do you have to wait for a tragedy?
No, of course, we would want to address it immediately. I mean, we have the opportunity and the foundation here a few years back and gave all the officers take-home safes for that very reason. And there is an expectation that they will utilize that. Now, not everybody uses that, but they have their own. And boy, if we hear that, we're certainly going to be having conversations and working through whatever it is with them to ensure that those weapons are safely secured. And if they can't be secured safely at home, then we would probably highly recommend, if not enforce them, to just leave them here in the lockers where they're secured in the department. So granted, then that's just our own department weapons that we can manage at that point. But we're going to make every effort to help that officer out. And if it's helping them with a safe as the foundation did, then that's what we're going to do.
So let me just add that, Megan, that would be a policy violation. So if an officer violated any section of the policy, that would be a cause for potential discipline. So more specifically, I mean, Ty's right, but the other part of that is the officer could be subject to discipline because they violated a policy. That's no different than any other policy or any other rule, right? So think of policies as the rules for the department. And if you violate a rule, you can get in trouble for that.
Thanks, that helps a lot.
All right, Ty, you want to just kind of run through each one of those? And
yeah, I will go as quickly as possible, but please raise your little hands there if you have any questions. 305, officer-involved shootings and deaths. This was updated by Lexipol to define the terms involved officers and to add a subsection to describe the considerations around duty assignment restrictions. And I'll clarify really quick, involved officers, if you haven't read it, it's going to be the officer who had used the force at that time or an officer that was on the scene that may have been impacted because they were directly involved in the scene but didn't use the force. So, for example, you're standing next to somebody who used force, you would be considered an involved officer as well versus somebody that's out on a perimeter controlling traffic at a scene. 306 firearms, we just went through that. That was updated by the police department to improve the language on regarding storage of firearms and training. And then 311 domestic violence. This policy was updated by Lexipol as a result of Senate Bill 183. Amended the law surrounding foreign court orders and their entry into law enforcement data systems and to make grammatical and formatting corrections. Just for edification and clarification, foreign courts are just like out-of-state stuff. Something, restraining order, something came from Texas, it can come into our law enforcement data system, and those can be some of the things that we can enforce. Search and seizure of 312. This was an update by us to bring the language types of searches into compliance with accreditation standards. 313 is the temporary custody of juveniles, updated by us again, the police department, to modify the language regarding no contact and separation of juveniles and adults as recommended by the Oregon Youth Development Division. That's been something that's been in place for quite some time. 323 standards of conduct. This policy was updated by Lexipol to add a reference to gender identity in the context of misconduct reporting and intervention standards. And then 401 bias-based policing, updated by the police department to bring the language regarding training into compliance with accreditation standards. 413 was the immigration violations. This policy was updated by Lexipol as a result of House Bill 3265. Amending existing law and created new law pertaining to immigration and requiring that agencies notify individuals of certain rights after their detention, as well as prohibiting immigration status inquiries. 422 was medical marijuana, updated by Lexipol as a result of House Bill 3000, changed some of the terms and definition within the policy. And then 425 was homeless persons, updated by Lexipol to conform to emergency legislation regarding homelessness. Most notably, the policy now contains language regarding an agency liaison, and it adds several new responsibilities with respect to homeless persons and their property. It is also reorganized the overall content. 429.
Can you put that in English? Sorry, Ty. Can you put 425 in English? Because I'm reading that saying, do we have a new police officer dedicated to homelessness, which seems like a lot for Sherwood.
That's. Oh, well,
Thank
there
you.
It just required the agency to identify a liaison or somebody that would be responsible for that. And so in Sherwood, that's me. So I'm the one that makes sure that our programs and activities that we're doing with regard to homeless persons is in compliance with state law.
Not to get derailed, but Megan, if you'll remind me, I'll give you an update on MHRT since it talks about some of the homelessness and mental health issues. I'll get to that at the end of this. Where was I? 429, First Amendment assemblies. This policy updated by Lexipol to conform to emergency legislation that describes how officers are expected to respond to public requests for identification. 504 is the impaired driving, updated by Lexipol as a result of House Bill 3140, adding psilocybin to the list of substances to which a urine test may be administered. And then 600, investigation and prosecution, updated by Lexipol as a result of Senate Bill 386, requiring the development of protocol for interviewing child witnesses. 800 is property and evidence, updated by the PD to bring the language into compliance with accreditation standards regarding property and evidence audits. 806, protected information. This policy was updated by Lexipol to correct the misidentification of a state agency. And then 900 is temporary custody of adults, updated by Lexipol as a result of House Bill 3265, amending existing law and create a new law pertaining to immigration and requiring that agencies notify individuals of certain rights after their detention, as well as prohibiting immigration status inquiries. And then 1000, recruitment and selection, updated by Lexipol to correct formatting errors. 1011, personnel complaints, updated by Lexipol to correct grammatical and formatting errors. And then 1017, employee awards and recognition. This was department staff update to our awards and recognition system. That was it in lightning speed. Is there any questions regarding those?
I had one which we can address very quickly. It's probably a yes or no. But on the, I'm looking for the exact number, the one about gender, shoot. Basically, my question is, when you detain someone, historically, we've had two genders in society, male and female. We now have more than that. Does that change your procedures, your policies? Or is it, like in my world of health insurance, what gender was assigned to you at birth and you're treated as such?
It's 323.
Thank you, Kim.
Thanks.
Standards of conduct.
No, were you jumping in there, Chief? Go ahead.
Yeah, so
since it's a publicly recorded meeting, it seems like a good question to put out there with clarification.
Yeah, so what it did is it just added gender identity into that policy, which is Chapter 323, Standards of Conduct. So that chapter contains all kinds of things that can cause you to get into trouble, right? So some real obvious examples: you can't fall asleep on duty, you can't, all kinds of stuff, right? And it also includes the requirement to report misconduct and the requirement to intervene, among some other things. That is some of the newer legislative required languages. And so what this update did is it just added a reference to gender identity within the context of all that. So it does not talk about how we should refer to folks or anything like that. It just talks about, it just added that reference.
So it's like saying him, her, they versus him or her, basically, in the language.
Well, yeah, it could be. I mean, it's just it just adds a reference to gender identity specific to that chapter. So I think the actual terminology that it was gender identity. I'd have to go back and look. Or actually, or you may be right. It may have changed some pronouns as well.
Chris, your hand's raised. And Mike
Yeah.
Smith.
My question has to do with the two that make reference to immigration in House Bill 3265. Could somebody tell me what House Bill 3265 was all about? It's not something that rings a bell with me.
Yeah, hang on here.
So what House Bill 3265 did essentially was amend existing law. So it didn't create a new law. It just bolstered an existing law, and it now requires folks to be informed of their rights after their detention, and it strengthened the language with regard to prohibiting investigative inquiries based on their immigration status. So in other words, we can't stop on the side of the road and walk up to an individual and say, hey, are you a legal resident, illegal alien, whatever? We can't make those inquiries. It's against the law. So that's what that's talking about. But it just also clarified, the law clarified what rights people have before, during, and after detention, and requires us to inform them of those rights instead of assuming that they know. So an analogy would be if I arrested you, Chris, I can't assume that you know that you have the right to remain silent. And so by law, I have to tell you, you have the right to remain silent.
Okay. That's what I kind of thought it was, but I just needed a clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's covered as well in Chapter 900, temporary custody of adults, right? Because it's basically the same thing. It deals with immigration, but then it also deals with potentially taking somebody into custody. Same change, 2 chapters.
Thank you.
Mike Smith and then Mike Schultz. You have comments, questions?
Mike Smith, the question will be easier to answer if you unmute.
Fine. Captain Hannon, I admit I spaced out about halfway through all of those updates. I was wondering if you would mind going back to the beginning and kind of starting over with those, because
Absolutely.
Just kidding, just kidding. You mentioned partway through their urine test, and I was just reading, and I don't know where this was, but a woman who was forced to take a mandatory urine test at a hospital after she had been arrested for drunk driving, and she'd done a blood test, and they forced her to take a urine test and all this type of stuff. I was wondering if any of our procedures address that specific issue of a forced urine test. Am I making any sense whatsoever?
You are. So the only, I guess, if you want to call it forced, would be under search warrant. So if in fact we suspect and we have probable cause, and we have, let's say we have a driver that's at the hospital, and we would write a search warrant under some of those circumstances for either urine or blood or whatever that may be, to determine their levels of intoxication. And this one in particular just added another drug into the mix for us to check for as far as substances. So I guess in a roundabout way, yes, we can, but most of the time it's, if we just stop somebody, they have a right to deny that, just like a breathalyzer.
Okay, great, thank you.
Chief, you have anything to add on that?
No, it's important to understand that searches and seizures can be forced by court orders. And so if worst came to worst and somebody needed to be strapped to a gurney, so that medical staff could draw their blood or other bodily fluids, then that's what would happen if we had a court order to do it. There would be other circumstances, but that's probably the best. But just to clarify that that can happen.
Mike Schultz.
I was just going to try to help with the clarification on the gender identity thing. It looks like it's just under, let's see, under section 323.4.1C. It looks like they just added it in discrimination against a person based on race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity, national origin. So it looks like they just added it there, and that was the only thing it was.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes.
Chris. Hey, Mike, can you lower your hand, please, unless you have more?
Get that hand down.
Thanks. Chris,
So,
you raised it
I have
again?
a second one, the search and seizure and comment by Chief and Captain Hanlon. So when you pull over somebody and you have probable cause that they may be transporting something illegal, do you have to get a judge to sign off before you can search the car?
Well, I'll give you the classic legal answer.
Okay.
It depends. You are, and I hope that Lori Zwingli is laughing more robustly than most. You are, when you talk about search and seizure, we are walking into a very, very deep pond full of alligators, and it really is based on the circumstances and all the facts of the case. There are instances in the state of Oregon where you can search a vehicle without a search warrant. And it's called the mobile exception. And it's based in part on the fact that the vehicle is mobile. And if you broke away and went to get a search warrant, it could drive away along with all your evidence. But those circumstances, those allowances, I should say, again, are very circumstantially based. And so it's just too hard to answer that with a yes or no question, because we'd have to have a very specific scenario, and then we could probably get to that.
Thanks for the clarification.
I mean, if you wanted to give us a situation about a friend you knew, then maybe I could help. I could give you a better answer, but otherwise.
Well, I just saw today, I saw a post by the Oregon State Police about a pullover that they did, and there was a false bottom in a little ice chest, one of those more of a lunchbox ice chest, and they found a bunch of illegal drugs there. And with this discussion, I'm going, then how could they search that? That's why I asked the question. That popped into my head.
So that to my point, that makes the answer a little bit easier. So they're on a traffic stop, so they have a mobile vehicle, right? So the vehicle can leave along with the evidence. So the mobile exception applies. They establish one of two things then happen. They establish probable cause based on whatever information they had to conduct that search, or they conducted the search based on consent. Now, the state law in Oregon has changed recently. Case law has changed. That consent has to be reasonably related to the reason for the stop. So again, it gets kind of complicated, but it really comes down to those two things. Either they had probable cause and they searched the vehicle based on exigency, or they had consent. And once you have the green light for a search, either one of those, then you're going to go wherever what you're searching for can be located. So in this case, they were probably searching for narcotics. I mean, not probably, I'm quite certain. I haven't seen the post, but I'm quite certain they were searching for narcotics. They looked at a lunchbox. Obviously trained and a very aware trooper said, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. the lunchbox appears to be 8 inches on the outside and it's only 4 inches on the inside, he or she digs a little deeper and discovers the false bottom, and then that's what we call great police work, because they've taken narcotics off the street. But it has to be done legally, and so yeah, that's how that would have played out. Now, if you change sorry, but you got me started. You change one fact of that case, and let's say that fact is the trooper pulls up to a car parked in a parking lot and it's not running and there's nobody in the driver's seat, but there's somebody that walks up that says they're associated with the car, back and forth, then you probably don't have the mobile exception.
So the other nuance I was wondering, let's say there's a pursuit and the vehicle is wrecked. Can they search the vehicle then, since it's not movable anymore, or do they have to rely on towing it and getting a search warrant?
Yeah, if the vehicle truly is not mobile, right? So it bounces off a tree and tears the rear axle off. There's no way you can articulate in any report that that's a mobile vehicle. Anything that affects the mobility, affects the exigency, it goes away. And in fact, time can affect the exigency. If the traffic stop, I don't know what the rules are now, but if the traffic stop lasts for an hour and that car hasn't gone anywhere, now potentially you're losing that exigency as well. So again, this is all science, right? It's very specific, very fact specific.
Thank you, Chief.
Mike Smith? You're still muted.
I have nothing. Sorry.
Well, your hand was raised. Okay, I'm going to go through the list. I don't see any more hands raised. Is there any more commentary, or are we ready to move on?
Vice Chair, before you move on, we do need the board to approve the policy updates with the recommendation to City Council.
Okay, do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, please raise your hand or say aye to approve as written and move forward with the policy updates to the board.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anything else you need, Chief?
No, we're good to go. Now Captain Hanlon can bring them forward to City Council.
Nope. We're doing it in order of the agenda. Traffic safety update, which I hope is short, Mike Smith and Chris West.
We switched,
Nothing?
they're done. No,
That's right. We did switch. I'm
We'd
so
be out of
sorry.
here. We'd be
It's
out
you
of
and
here.
Lori.
I mean, if we left it to Chris to talk about it. No, I'm just kidding. So Lori and I officially had our first meeting. The first one scheduled was, we didn't have a quorum. So last month we had our official first meeting. So we were kind of sitting back and trying to observe. I think, at least Lori, didn't you feel like that? Observe to see if we could figure out the way that it all worked, and so that we could listen. And it was funny because they kept looking to us to engage and have further comments. So we had to roll up our sleeves and dive in right away. I won't go into a ton of detail, but just because we are supposed to bring back the conversation to you all so that you know what's being discussed. I did take some notes, and so I'll just highlight some areas of concern in the city that people have reported. So, and then I'll just tell you a little bit about those. So if that's okay, Lori, unless you want to jump in. Okay, cool. One of the areas that they're still looking at is Lad Hill and Sunset, kind of just beyond Archer Glen. The lighting, there's been some complaints about the lighting in that intersection, but they actually have, they put in some new LED lightings there. And so they're going to observe and see if that helps with some of the lighting issues without having to go the more expensive route of installing actual, entirely new poles. And then there's still a concern about traffic and speeding. They did put the flashing coming off of Lad Hill sign a while ago, but they're still going to kind of monitor that area as far as speeding and traffic. They are finding that it does tend to happen morning commute, evening commute. And so the morning commute is a little bit more of the concern just because of the school traffic that is there, the school pedestrian like traffic and crossing. Another item was the relocation. We've talked about this one before, the relocation of the crosswalk across from where the old Sherwood Middle School was, which is now an elementary school. The crosswalk was in front of Hopkins, right? That's Hopkins, yes. And now it's the district office. So they are going to relocate that crosswalk, or the light with the crosswalk. So that's in the works. The project, they said the project is underway. Some of these things are already, some of the complaints, or some of the, I shouldn't say complaints, some of the community concerns are already being addressed in some of the city projects that they have coming up. So some of them we review, and then when we review them, they're already built in sometimes to some city capital improvement plans. So we just make a note of that in our meeting if that is the case. One of the newer concerns was the senior center. Somebody advised that in the corner of basically the entrance to the senior center where there's 2 curbs and it goes down off those 2 curbs, somebody suggesting that those should be made into the types of curbs that have the yellow bumps on them, for lack of a better way to say it. That's probably not the technical term, but so that where all the new curbs are installed with the yellow marking and then the bumps to go down off the curb. So the city is looking into that, but it's becoming a bigger project because basically that street that goes in right there by the senior center doesn't currently meet the code. So by changing the curbs, they would also, or by changing the corners to the yellow bumps, they would also have to make the sidewalks larger. The street doesn't meet the current code. So it's a little bit of a bigger project. They're looking into if they can just paint some areas yellow first until they look into further developments to bring that intersection up to code. But they said as a whole, the city is reviewing various intersections to bring them up to code as money allows and things. So that's one though that community members brought to our attention. I guess just kind of one other is, there's a few other, but I'll tell you about one other. Is there was a community member talked about how all of the parking that happens by the YMCA, but basically between Hostler and where the entrance to the YMCA is, there's parking that happens there where the street dips down and it's pretty dark. And so people are worried about visibility. And especially if people are walking on the path. And I believe that people park there because they live in the condos, that there's the path to the condos there. But an interesting thing that the city engineer brought up that I didn't think about is actually when you have the cars parking on each side of the street right there, it actually slows down the speed of traffic that goes on down Woodhaven. So that was one of his comments that was really interesting because people were complaining about visibility, but he said his fear is if they removed parking from both sides of the street right there, that people would actually speed in that area faster. And there's concerns with that with both the path and the entrance to the YMCA. And so they're going to look into potentially painting some yellow on the curbs that come up to Hostler Way because people complained about visibility issues to pull out of Hostler Way. So they're going to paint a little bit more yellow on the curb, which technically by law, they're not supposed to park all the way up to the curb anyway. But the city's going to look into basically painting the yellow so it makes it a little more obvious. So it meets, hopefully, it will at least start to address some of the concerns from the community members, but also not maybe alleviate some of or get rid of some of the concerns with the city having the parking on both sides. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, maybe more than you wanted to know, but I thought it was actually pretty interesting.
Thanks, Diane. So 2 things, and then I'll get to you, Mike Smith. I see your hand up. On the YMCA parking dark lit issue you just brought up, I live on Woodhaven, farther down, and what I find is people do go pretty slow because of the cars on each side. So it's like, nature area, sidewalk, cars, and then the part of the street where you can actually drive. But it is extremely dark. There are no street lights between, I don't think, Hostler and Sunset. So more than painting the curbs yellow, it'd be nice to have that lit. Because I know, like, I walk at 6 a.m. and my headlamp is the only thing lighting the street.
Yeah, and that is a dark area, like a lot of other areas in Sherwood.
Lots of them.
The visibility complaint wasn't actually, I should have been more specific. It wasn't about light, actually. It was more visibility of seeing around the corner with the two sides of cars parked.
It's tough. Yeah,
so
I
that
can
was
tell you.
That was, because we have to stick to sort of addressing the way that the community members bring the complaint. Yes. So.
Because I could tell you, like, the exact cars where they park every week. One has a Winona Ryder sticker on it. I mean, it's the same there. Other thing is Chief Dorsey and I met, I don't remember if it was August or September now, Chair Dorsey, excuse me. I was looking at you, Chief. Chair Dorsey and I met, and we were wondering if for traffic safety, instead of having 2 police advisory board members at every meeting, would it work with the charter of traffic safety committee to alternate? So for example, Diane, you do October, and Lori, you do November, or Diane, you do 4 months and then Lori does the next 4 months. So it's easier on you guys not having multiple meetings per month, but also, is it really necessary to have 2 police advisory board members on the traffic safety committee? Do you have thoughts, comments on that?
I see the chief nodding, but the one thing I was going to say right out of the gate is because Lori and I were there for the first meeting, and we were definitely helping them get to a quorum. So my worry would be, and they also have some vacant seats right now. So my worry would be that we wouldn't actually assist them in getting to the quorum they need in order to have the meeting. And then just my other side, more personal comment is that, if one of us couldn't be there, it sure is nice that the other one is up to speed because we're both listening. But go ahead, Chief.
So the municipal code specifically says 2, excuse me, 2 liaisons from the police advisory board. So you couldn't rotate because I don't think that would meet the intent of the code. Now, it could be a different 2 every month, but it would need to be, so you could rotate in that way. I don't know how logistically whether that would make sense or not, but it does need to be 2 people.
Okay. Well, we were brainstorming, trying to make your life easier. Mike Smith.
Well, I would like to think that Chris and I had set an incredibly high bar for reporting on the Traffic Safety Committee, but Diane has just killed us, so thank you.
I had to go in it was my first meeting. I had to go in strong.
Yeah, that was amazing. But I think you're having an impact because you had mentioned the stuff on Lad Hill and Sunset, Lad Hill and Sunset. And as I came back from going to the Safeway store today, on Lad Hill and Willow Drive, one of our Sherwood finest had pulled over a speeder right there, and I was going like, yes! So thank you for your impact on that, and great report. Thank you.
Chris West.
And I just want to add that I'm glad to see the stuff that we left you is still there.
Okay, can we go on to Councillor Young's news, or do we have more on traffic safety? Lori, anything else to add? Okay, Kim, you're up.
All right. Well, I was excited that our city manager was here and you guys got to meet him. So if those who haven't, I hope you get an opportunity. His 2 weeks in so far, I think he's doing a great job for 2 weeks in. Just a few things that we've been discussing lately. 2 meetings ago, so about 2.5 weeks ago, we had a work session to discuss backyard chickens again. And our staff will be bringing forward an ordinance to us eventually to review and vote on. After, I know chickens has been brought up a lot over the last 5-10 years. It has never been approved, but after looking at our surrounding areas, we're the only city around us that doesn't allow them. And we had our staff reach out to all those cities to see what kind of problems they have with them, what kind of complaints they get. And it's really just very minimal. And our ordinance will have restrictions around it, lot size, how many you can have, no roosters, how far the pen has to be from the lot line walls, next to your neighbor and that kind of stuff. So look forward to that. If anybody has any input, we'll take public comment on that. Also, that same meeting, we discussed our, I'm not sure what Mike S. is laughing at. He must not want chickens, but we also discussed our outdoor dining again, how we ended that al fresco program where we had closed off Railroad Street. We ended that when the governor allowed 100% dining back inside. But some of our businesses we're finding are still struggling because there's just people that don't want to dine inside still during COVID. So we had a work session and we opened it up to all of our downtown businesses to come and give us their thoughts on that. And we reviewed some surrounding cities of what they've done, Beaverton and Portland, Westland, Lake Oswego. And I think there's some good options that I know at least a couple of us counselors are hoping that our staff can come up with something that some of those businesses can move out into the parking spots in front of their business is what some of the cities have done and had, open structures, open tents. They've built wood structures like Portland has some very nice things that businesses have done. So we're still working with our businesses to give them some flexibility during the cold, rainy season when people are still hesitant to be inside to dine. And then also that same meeting, this one's exciting, we approved our city manager pro tem, Kristen, at the time, Kristen Schweitzer, to sign a professional services contract with KPFF Consulting Engineers for the design of the pedestrian bridge. So that's moving forward. That'll be a 30% design, that contract. And yeah, so that's pretty exciting to get that moving. That is Lori's waving her hand.
Let's say, Lori.
What does a 30% design mean?
I was afraid somebody was going to ask that, and so I brought it.
Wait, and we're talking about design, not actually like hired the architect building it yet.
Right.
Right.
I can step in if you want.
Who's saying
Keith,
that?
you're still here. Great.
I'm watching the meeting. No,
I brought up the staff report to explain what 30% design, but hey, I'm going to let our new city manager take the hot seat on that one.
So impressed.
Oh, see, now the pressure's on, right? So basically what you're doing is you're working with a group of engineers and professionals who are looking about going on site. And in fact, that's what we've done. You go on site and you're trying to look about getting engineering plans at a place at what they call 30% completed. So it's really starting to do the groundwork of getting into looking at the lay of the land, looking at the utilities, looking at all of the challenges once you say we want to build a bridge, which is what the city had done with the feasibility study. Now we've said we want to build a bridge. Now let's make it a reality with the conditions that we have to face. So you bring in architects and engineers and a whole lot of experts who come in and say, we are going to work to get to plans that are at a point of now being moved forward to a 30% completion. Once you do that, you can kind of take next step to get to final plans. And then at that point, you can go into construction. So it seems easy to put up a bridge, but once you actually start looking about building a bridge and thinking in all the considerations, that's where the complications come. And this is the process we go through to get to that 30% complete. Getting through more of the feasibility, but into the actual weeds of the design, what it's going to look like and what options will work considering what challenges you have in terms of, again, the structure and the conditions out there. Does that make sense, hopefully?
It did.
That makes sense, but now I have a question. So we're talking about welcome to Megan always has questions. We're talking about one bridge from the YMCA to the new high school, correct?
Correct.
Because I've heard city rumors that, oh, well, we're doing that one, so we should do one at Meineke simultaneously because it's not that much more. I mean, it's that much more in cost. It's not that much more in something else. But we're talking about just one over 99 at Sunset to the high school, correct?
Correct.
Currently.
Currently, yeah. And
There
there's
is another plan for a bridge in the CIP. Were you just going to say that? At
But
Meineke. But that one's going to be a lot more spendy because we actually have to lift, if I understand right, we'll have to lift 99. And that will be
That's more of a tunnel.
Creek Trail. And you know about that one, Keith, too?
Yeah, it's the second plan. The cost of that is there, but it is part of the capital improvement plan. Again, it's a tunnel underneath, further up on 99, and I think the goal is long term, longer term. The initial plan and the focus is on the first bridge at the YMCA location, but there is a second plan for that tunnel bridge. Correct.
And this is like in the next 5 years, next 10 years. What are the bridge timeframes?
Well, the current pedestrian bridge, the first one by the YMCA of the high school, I mean, I think we're hoping within 2 years it'll be complete. The other one in the CIP, I don't believe it's not in our 5-year forecast at this point. Okay. So I don't think we've put a timeline on that. We have to identify funding.
Have fun with that. Anything else on counselor news?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, staff report.
Yeah, I think we covered all the things that I was going to talk about. Ty, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, real quick, just so you know that we've identified an SRO, and they will be starting tentatively November 1st. So hopefully
is that high school only, or?
No, it's for the entire school district. Their main office will be at the high school, but they're going to be available and present in all the schools. And so this is exciting. It's been a long time, and I know the school's excited, and we're just working out some of the logistics on our end, since we're going to be pulling somebody out of patrol for that. And they're going to hit the ground running. They're excited. The school district's excited. And so I think that's less than 2 weeks. And
Lori, that's one better than none. We're getting there.
Hey, and the
so
other thing,
this is the existing SRO position. So in all fairness, I need to make sure everybody understands that the primary responsibility for that position is the high school. So I don't want anybody to walk away thinking that, oh, my kid's going to see the SRO, several times a week at the middle school. That may or may not happen. The primary duty is the high school. So.
Yeah, but we're at least getting one back.
So
well, yeah, and of course, COVID. There was no school in session, so
no point.
And just for Keith's benefit, Keith, we have been kicking around the idea of having a second SRO. Sorry, I clearly have a 4-footed guest in the room with me. We've been trying to get a second SRO in place for a few years now. So the idea that we were without one at all for a while kind of bothered us. So now that the one is coming back on board, that makes us all happy. But we still want number 2.
Well, I have plans for,
two,
one at every school, but we'll get there.
And so do I. Well, maybe not every school, but
every school.
My long-term vision was 3. And we have the second position funded. We just have to get the staffing in place and get everything worked out with the school district to get that body in place. So again, it's important that everybody understands that City Council agrees with the statement that Lori Zwingli just made, and City Council and the Budget Committee approved a position specifically for that. But, obviously what we can't control is our staffing and recruiting challenges. So we continue to fight through those.
But we were given, wait, let's back up the truck. We were given funding a few years ago from Mayor Mays for the 6 positions, right? And we said we can't do 6 all in 1 year, but we'll do 6 over 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, correct, Chief? And so we've been slowly working a plan to make the department the size and scope we want it. Am I off on that? But I thought that was something from the staffing study.
I'm gonna make a few nuances. So, with no disrespect to Mayor Mays, because he was certainly a supporter, it was city council driven. We had strong city council support for our staffing plan, which called for 6 positions over 3 years, and we have completed those 3 years. But status quo doesn't exist in any organization. And so, as we add those bodies, people decide to move their family out of state. They decide to go to work other places, any myriad of things that happen in any organization, right? You can't drive a 1/4-mile block in Sherwood right now without seeing probably 6 help wanted signs. So that is the curse of a strong job situation, and it appears there's more jobs than people, and so everybody's facing recruiting challenges, and we're no different. And we could go on and on about that, but the reality that we have when we hire somebody, they really don't become a usable resource for 12 to 18 months, depending on their background. So anyway, one of those 6 positions was the second SRO. And it was one of the last positions we added, or that we had identified. So yes, you're correct, but like I said, with some nuance.
I'll just add, so yeah, thank you for clarifying. Mayor Mays as a single person can't approve any of that single-handedly, but City Council, we in our budget have approved all 6 of those positions. And if we're fortunate enough to get them all filled, that would be great. And the second SRO position, with the hiring, with getting one hired, and also still needing to work with the school district for their approval. But I know conversations are happening. I know I've met with school board members, and I think conversations for that will be taking place. So we're looking on the positive there.
So are we going to hear who the new SRO is going to be?
No.
Okay. I had to ask.
So I only reserve that just because we want to announce that in conjunction with the school district, and I don't want it out there before we've had time, and out of respect for them, so that they send it out. I would otherwise tell you. It's not a secret. We're just coordinating the announcement. Hey, I got you really quick, not to belabor this, but I mentioned it earlier, our mental health response team that is up and running in South Cities. I want to give kudos to City Council for advocating and supporting that. And we just heard a story tonight about them responding here in Sherwood. So if you're not familiar with it, it's the countywide team that has been around for quite a while, but nothing has been specific for the South Cities, which include Tualatin, Tigard, King City, and ourselves. We, in the last month, have put together a team which includes all those cities, and the rotation is the clinician will ride with an officer from each city for 2 weeks at a time, obviously responding to all of the South Cities' needs. Right now is our turn, and I can't remember if you guys had heard, but Officer Kesey was the one selected for that. Oh, we got 5 minutes left. And he's been out this in his first thing, and they're doing great stuff. They have responded on a call last night that was beneficial for everybody involved, in particular the person that was in the mental health crisis. And I'm excited. I'm not excited that we're dealing with the mental health crisis, but I'm excited that we have a team that is going to be available and just a fantastic resource. So I wanted to give a quick update on that.
Any other staff reports? Citizen comment, Angie?
No, we don't have any citizen comments this evening.
Okay, so before we adjourn, Captain Hamlin, Chief Growth, can the three of us stay on non-recorded after we adjourn?
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a good question. I'm not sure if that's okay or not, honestly, Megan. It might be safer if we just schedule a separate meeting.
That's fine. I can email you.
Just because this is I'm sorry. Just because this is a public meeting, I'm not sure if it's okay, and I don't want to risk it.
No, that's fine. Something was brought to my attention that's not board specific, but definite police specific. And since I have the chief and captain, it just made sense to me to, try to take care of it at once.
Yeah, you can shoot us an email and schedule another time, but you and everybody else always has access to us. So
perfect. Okay. If there's nothing else, let's adjourn. Oh, wait, Mike has his hand up. Mike Smith.
I've got a couple of things. First of all, Kim, you wondered why I was laughing about chickens. I volunteer at the Wildwood Animal Sanctuary outside of Newburgh, which is a rescue facility for farm animals, including chickens. And at one time, I thought I'd love to have chickens in my backyard. Trust me, I don't. Okay, so there is that. Secondly, Brian earlier had mentioned a ride-along, and something I'd love to do, and I just don't know what the process is in terms of how anybody on this committee could get involved with that. But if the chief could let us know on that, that'd be great. And then third, Chief, your impending retirement, and I realize it's not until December when it gets finalized, so we'll have time to get maudlin before then. But I just want to say thank you. I think you've set the tone. I know that Keith will get us someone wonderful in your position, but you have been superb. So thank you very, very much. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you for your kind words, Mike. I'll just tell you in response to your question, if you go to the police department website, you can download and fill out the citizen ride-along request form and turn it in. If you'd rather, you can come pick one up at the station and anybody can go on a ride-along. And once we get the form, we complete the rudimentary background checks and get you set up with somebody and go from there. And I would highly encourage everyone, if you haven't done it yet, you really need to. And there's several board members that have, and they can tell you about their experience. So, but it's pretty easy to get them set up.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, board members. Thank you, Chief Growth and Captain Hanlon and Angie. I appreciate all of your work. This meeting, do I have a motion to adjourn? Lori, do I have a second? Chris, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, Megan.